two.
Welcome to a special edition of Community Update. I'm your host, I'm Andre Evans, and I want to take the time to thank my gentlemen, special guests being on the show, taking time out of your busy schedules to be here today, Mr. James Hills and Mr. Robert Badgett. Today's topic, we're going to be talking about police brutality and the procedures that are taking place. I want to start with Mr. James Hills. Again,
Yes,
thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here. I know it was such a hassle getting here. So there's from what I understand, there's a 6-month extension
Yes.
for the pilot program, and I understand it's also another 6 months they added to that?
No. From what I understand, the pilot program was for 6 months, and they extended the pilot program another 6 months to give it a full year. So that's what they're doing now. The
Okay.
last date, I believe, is going to be around the second date of September.
Okay.
They're in the process now of, of course, maybe looking at evaluating what's went on with the body cameras so far. They're not the expert, as I mentioned. Shagun Idawu from Boston Camera Action Team has
Yes.
been doing a lot of work. Him and Andrea
Okay.
Campbell been holding the community hearings. They just finished one up about a week ago. The last hearing where people are giving feedback about the cameras, and it's from my just observation. There's very sort of mixed feedback.
Okay. So basically, the community's obviously reassurance is to make sure that the Boston Police Department is actually wearing these cameras and they're actually in use. And now, as you as a community activist, how would you view or handle this type of procedure, just from your own experience?
Just from my own experience, not being an expert in the area at all, there are great folks that really work on particularly this issue.
Right.
Just as someone in the community who's observed, who's heard some feedback, I pulled a cop aside one day at the cleaners.
Okay.
He was African American, and I said, listen, let me just ask you, this was before the pilot went in, I said, let me just ask you your opinion about the cameras. And he said, bro, it can go either way. It can help us as far as cases, but then if I have a camera on it and I pull you over and you're driving without a license, but you live 2 streets from the supermarket and your 70-year-old mother called you to please come get her. You take that risk, you go 2 blocks, you get pulled over. To some extent, that officer no longer has discretion to say, bruh, not a good choice, get home and don't ever do it again. It's on camera, so then is he stuck following procedure? Does he get reprimanded for, so there's varying opinions out there. When I run into the cops, I kind of walk up on them in the middle and kind of, smile. I've been in places where, even like Shagun one day was taking a picture with someone and they had a camera on. I mean, my sense and my observation is that the pilot program did get started. I understand that there's some data, that has been collected and is stored. The kinks of that are in the process of being worked out because it is in a pilot stage.
Right.
There's opportunities for the community to give feedback about how they would like that to be set up. We also have to consider the fact the police union. You know what I mean? They're a huge factor in this as well.
Okay.
So.
Very interesting, very interesting. Now, Mr. Badgett, unfortunately, my cousin was a fatal shooting from the Boston Police. You want to care to share more information about that and what's actually being done about that?
Well, it's still under investigation. My cousin Terrence Coleman, he got killed by the police on Shaman Avenue.
Okay.
His mother had called the EMS for them to take him to the hospital because he was having some issues.
Right. Now, they knew this.
Yeah, they have his record
So,
for years on the mental depression.
and there's no ramifications for that. I don't
No,
understand
they
that.
trying to say he came at them with knives. First of all, he was in the house.
Okay, right.
And his mother said, "You police not coming in here. Let the EMS come in." So instead of them letting the EMS come in, right, they said they switched it all around and said he was coming at them with knives. So they end up coming in.
And
the
these
house.
are rookie police
Yeah,
officers at
they
that.
was on the force for 2 years. And all the other police are outside, and they let the 2 rookies
And how long
go
ago
in.
was this?
Back at the end of last year.
Okay, recent, okay.
But even if he did have a knife, how come they couldn't have tased him and they know the guy has mental issues? They have all his police records.
They have it on
I mean,
record, but yet
his
they
medical
still
records.
took it upon themselves to felt they had to shoot him.
Yes,
That
that's
makes
not
no-
the first time he had to go to the hospital.
Okay. Wow, that's really sad. It really is. But that brings me to another question. I know I don't want this to sound like this is a scene from CSI or Law and Order, but can a police, what is the proper procedure? While if a police is in pursuit, are they allowed to shoot if you don't, say if this, because I've been at Mass Ave Station and I came out, this was maybe almost a year ago, and the cops started shooting at an assailant. He was just running though.
I don't think they're supposed to just start shooting just like that, because they could hit someone else.
Yeah, I know. And this guy
They
just
have
started
to-
open fire.
to
He
me,
said
they have to
freeze,
have a
and then he
reason.
just started shooting.
To feel their life is in danger
You're
or
right,
they're
you're right.
threatened.
They have to have a reason to pull out their gun and start shooting.
Yeah.
Like if I'm shooting at them,
Right.
or I'm really coming at them.
I know there's some type of law, but I just wasn't sure how that was implemented, because
This-
a lot of police take it upon themselves to just start shooting at someone, they start running away.
It's I had asked Andre when he had mentioned, I was aware of the situation, and it's one, my condolences. Two, I was in contact with one of the family members, just trying to check in with her, because there was a sentiment in the community. Boston has. We are unique in the fact that, it's often said we're not like other cities. We're not.
Right,
we're
right.
Boston and other cities are other cities. That's real.
Right.
Senator Russell Holmes said at the town hall about race on Channel 5 last year that Boston is one incident away from going buck wild. And I had said to someone that Terrence was that one incident. What has happened is, he did have a mental health history and DMR, DMH, whatever, and this is where it's important that we, and this isn't the topic tonight, but we got to start talking about how behavioral health plays into, working with law enforcement, because if someone is dealing with mental health issues, the strict law enforcement as the first line of defense might not always have the best results. You know what I mean? And it was obvious, saddening, so disheartening, and really shouldn't have happened if we had the proper behavioral health services in place. This is why Ayanna Presley is trying to move to have a social worker within each police department, a mental health worker, so when these situations come up, and if this young man, is familiar to that area, to that office, with all due respect, oh, here goes T again doing something. There would be a relationship that oh, here they come again, and he will calm down. So there are opportunities to build better relationships, but then also we have to factor in the behavioral health component, because I think after it's all said and done, I'm curious to what the investigation is going to find between what was his past mental health history, what were the incidents, and every time they
But if
came
they
to the
had
house,
a
and what would
record, why, I assume they must have intervened the radio call, because originally it was for EMS, but what prompted them to enter the domain and to take it upon themselves? That's the part that just, I can't seem
I
to.
don't know. My cousin Hope, his mother was trying not for the police to come in at him. She was just saying he has to go to the hospital.
Right.
I want the EMS.
Right,
And
right.
they just took it upon himself.
And he wasn't a threat to
Himself.
anyone.
No. What I understand, she told me he said something bad, to the police.
Oh,
okay.
Like he was gonna screw Obama's daughter.
Oh, okay.
And they got ticked off.
But that's still no,
But he's dealing with mental health issues.
Right.
and they had his record, so they knew. So if they were rookie, I guess somebody was trying to prove
But
something.
down there in the South End, the police department is very racist.
Yeah,
That's A1.
yeah.
Is that
That's the
A1?
one right
A1,
there
I
on,
think that's
Harrison
Harrison
Ave.
Ave. Harrison Ave, yeah.
Okay.
They're very racist down
D4.
Yeah.
D4.
Yes.
They're
Used to be
very
on
racist
Tremont Street in
over
Castle
there.
Square. I remember the old, what was that, Station 3, if I remember correctly, the old police station.
No, Station 3 is Blue Hill Ave.
Blue-
B3.
Oh, yeah, okay, that's right. And it's still under investigation.
Yes.
Now, my question is, how can the community get involved? I mean, I know there's a lot of protesters, just like with Michael Brown and Baltimore. How can us, as a community, what can we do to help alleviate this issue?
Huge things. One of the things that I mentioned that what City Councilor Ayanna Presley proposed. So
Right,
she's
right.
proposing that there be an ordinance that somehow the City of Boston, the police department, figure out how to fund and have a mental health worker within each district.
Right.
So when that hearing is announced, we show up. Convo about hearings being in the middle of the day, people at work, that's a different story. But when that hearing announcement comes out, you can send information. I encourage you to get your family ready now to have letters to write in support of the mental health workers. This is the way the community gets involved. They make phone calls to lend their support to Ayanna Pressley to find out what's going on.
Okay.
If that, I believe, mental health is not Ayanna's committee, but once she files the hearing, and if it's another committee person, then phone calls are made to that committee person in support of. So we rallied 500 people to start making phone calls to show up at the hearing, to testify about incidents where family members have had behavioral health issues and law enforcement has not exemplified sensitivity to those behavioral health issues. One of the things I'm kind of beat up about sometimes is being balanced or kumbaya. On the police's end, a lot of times they're not trained. There's general training, but they may not have. They may need more specialized training when you're dealing with people that have dual diagnosis and mental health issues. They need training to be able to triage those calls. But if you have a social worker there, so the community can get involved by showing up in support. Also, it doesn't necessarily address the one incident, but there are bills being proposed by different senators. Sonia Chang Diaz just put a whole bunch of bills out to the House and Senate. And when there are times where, people that don't share our same values have power to vote not in favor of what we share, then we need to figure out how we get 500 phone calls to that speaker's office. We figure out how we get, 1,000 emails, to that person's office. So this is how the community can get involved. They can demand, we've done well at requesting, and we have highlighted what those that are paid by our tax dollars should be doing. But when they don't, we ask. And it's just to a point now that we need to go and say, this is not happening, and this is what we demand as the community. And that's how we get involved. We're in the process now of organizing a sort of citizens campaign in its infancy and getting people knowledgeable about the process. Every 2, 4, 6 years, candidates go out and they get reelected. Well, we're going to take that model from the door knocking to the phone banking and apply it to an issue and get people engaged that aren't usually engaged. The last part of this is the community does need to step up.
Yes.
When there are opportunities for the community to participate, the balance is, it's good to be on social media. It's good to complain. It's good to, fuss at the police if a shooting happens and everybody's out and things are going on. But do you go to your neighborhood association meeting? Do you go to your PTA meeting with your children's, at the school or whatever? So I'll take down and shut up.
Yeah, what he's talking about, how the community needs to step up, that's the truth.
Yes.
Because ever since I've been doing my show in 04, the community doesn't want to say nothing. They don't, like you said about the meetings, I used to go videotape them community meetings.
Yes, I remember.
And I'd be telling the people, people need to start coming out to the police meetings, community meetings, so you could know what's happening in your neighborhood.
Absolutely.
But, the city's not going to do nothing for our community if we don't care.
That's true.
That's the balance.
That's true.
That's the balance.
And that's what it shows, that people just don't care.
I think I'll push
A
back
lot
on
of
that.
people,
I think-
not all.
Not
They
all.
care.
Not
We
all.
haven't-
They care, but they're just afraid to either step up unless if something happens to them
Or they
something
don't
close
know,
to them.
and that's true, or they don't know how. So we get a group of 10 people in your living room. I bring former state rep Carlos Enriquez or Stephanie Everett that's well versed in the political process, and we sit with 10 people and go through what the budget looks like. How do you organize in your community? Does someone come out and meet with your family around organizing around not just his death, but also sort of, with all due, the bigger picture around what are the incidents that led to that incident playing out like that? You know what I mean? That's key in us being successful in the community, participating and also partnering.
That's right.
That's it. Yeah.
And that's needed all over
Definitely
the city
needed.
of Boston.
Yeah.
Because it's
And
so
what
much
about
happening.
Sheriff Steve Tompkins? I mean, what is his role in this? Because I'm hearing a lot. He's.
I don't even know. I couldn't tell you.
I mean, of current, and I had mentioned to you that,
Yeah.
I mean, I think within the past
His
it's been
name was
3 to
mentioned quite
5
a few
months.
times. Every time something like this comes up, his name. Well, you need
Yeah.
to talk to the street. You know, so I'm thinking, okay, so what is his role? You know, I mean,
In all fairness to him, at least the last 5 months, he is grieving, since he lost his wife.
right.
Steve's heart is in the community. I worked with him years ago when he was in development in a cubicle,
Right.
working to raise money for the teen center. So
Okay,
his heart
okay.
is in a place.
Right.
As far as being dedicated to the community, I know that there's some programming that goes on in South Bay. I'm not well versed on everything that goes on in there, but personally, I have a rapport with Sheriff Tompkins, and he's had some dialogues around race and whatnot
Okay.
over the past few months. Right now, where he is as far as what's going on, he himself, I believe, is definitely committed to addressing the issue as far as, Sheriff Tompkins. I'm not sure of what his exact level is, but I'm sure his appointees or whatever are participating and contributing to what's going on. Before his thing is, I do remember hearing this directly from him. He'll take care of them when they get there, but his thing is he wants to prevent them from getting there. So I know there's some programming around things like maybe something similar to Scared Straight, where young people come in and view the jail or whatever.
Right.
But as of late, I know he's still grieving, after losing his wife of many years. So
wow. Okay.
They need a Scared Straight program.
they do.
Back in the day,
They
Scared
need that
Straight.
ba- they
It was
need
like
that
an
bad
after
out
school
here.
special. It started off as just a basic PSA, then they took it to a different level, but then it just stopped doing it. I haven't heard anything from.
It's a TV show now or something, right?
Yeah, but they need a real.
They need more.
Scared
Though.
Straight.
Yeah.
Yeah, they need more programs that's informative.
Yep.
To let people know what's going on in the community. Not just to let people know what's going on, but how these issues can be solved.
Absolutely.
And it's all about education. If you don't have the education, then we're just sitting here scratching our heads trying to figure out, well, why did this happen? So. But I mean, I really feel bad about what happened because you're not the only person. Because there's quite a other few people who have lost family members behind fatal shootings, and these are not rookies. These are just police officers that's been veterans. So I'm thinking, I mean, how did my question is this: how did this even start with this? I mean, we always back in the Watts riots, the police, with brutality. But how did it get to the point where they start fatally shooting our own people? I mean, how did this? Does anybody even have a clue as to how this even got started? I think I might have an answer, but I don't want to say and just say, oh, well, you're saying all police are bad. Honestly, my take, what I would think, the floodgates have been open. Once you know the old saying, once you open Pandora's box, because you got all kind of people saying, well, damn, I can carry a gun, I got a badge. It's legal to carry a gun, and somebody who has mental issues, next gang member, because it seems like the door's been wide open, saying anybody could be a police officer nowadays.
That's right.
And I think that's partially where that comes from.
And they're trained not to shoot to wound you. They train to shoot to kill.
Yeah, exactly.
And that doesn't make much sense. How come you can't shoot a person in the arm or something?
Or the leg.
Or the
Or the tase, or what? I mean, I don't.
It's like they get a lot of them getting gun happy, trigger happy, whatever.
And another thing is, what are the ramifications if a police officer fatally shoots someone? What is the ramifications behind that?
They go out on.
They get suspended.
And it gets investigated.
I also
And
thought
that's
they should implement a law where they could take, how if you drive a car and if you get caught with a DUI, you can lose your license and your car. I think the police should lose their license to carry a firearm.
so.
I know that's kind of harsh, but
No,
at the same time,
You're in the vein of there's a brother in the community and y'all probably have heard of him by Jamal Crawford, who has done a lot of work. The ACLU, Rasan Hall. There is a movement right now around decertification of law enforcement officers who have had multiple issues, either around racism, domestic violence. Nurses in different disciplines, if they get, and I believe it's if they get indicted or convicted, they lose their licensure, so they can no longer practice. So as a law enforcement officer,
okay.
the other piece about the shootings and the investigations is that we have the police department.
Right.
We have the district attorney's office.
Right.
Most of the time, they play and work together to solve cases.
Right.
If you are going to be the entity that usually work together, that's going to now be on the flip end of investigating my behavior in a questionable shooting, it's questionable of the integrity of the investigation because of the prior relationship. So one of the movements, or one of the, which should soon be demands is when there are police-involved shootings, there be an independent investigation. Right now, we can't have an independent investigation around Terrence until the normal process, because I remember because there was chatter among some community organizers around demanding an independent investigation. Process and procedure says Dan's office gets to investigate it first, and then depending on their findings, and then there may or may not be independent. I know some community leaders, some elected officials of color that I've heard from their own mouth, the ask and demand is an independent investigation. So, you asked, what is it all of a sudden? It's been going on. I had the same meeting the other day with a bunch of high-ranking law enforcement officials.
Okay.
I said to them, when we were talking about community and police relations, I said, let me just keep it very real with you. In the age of these young people being woke, and the internet, and Black Lives Matter, and appreciation of our heritage and culture, we're aware of the fact that the police departments were started to do what? Rally up runaway slaves. You know what I'm saying? So from the beginning, going back to 13 and all of that, it's never been set up in a manner to really be, it evolved in protect and serve. I won't go too far back into that, but I think it's media coverage. I think it's social media. I think it's the nature of it. It's not so much blown out of proportion, but now where if we didn't have Facebook and Twitter 10 years ago and that happened in Ferguson, it would trickle over a period of 6 months. Did you hear? Did you see the paper? Did you hear? Social media, you recording this right there.
Yes.
And I think I know that we as people of color are sick and tired of realizing, or the realization of the systemic process in the institutions that were never in the beginning in the design set up for us to be successful. So now all of a sudden we have to fit. I don't know if we're going to fit or if we're going to wedge our own. You know what I mean? So it's yeah, sorry.
What do you see in just one community at a time, Boston? What do you see for the future? What is your overall vision? What do you think is going to happen? Just in general. The way everything's going from back then and up until now, the way everything seems like everybody's just running around going crazy.
What I see is, and it's funny because I see. What I mean by that is I just have from our former dealings and whatnot, I have a little extra set of insight. And from where we were and where we are, what I see, if our community comes together, if community organizers can get over their own territorialism, crap, not working together, he's doing the work, she's doing the real work, she does it like this, I don't do. Bruh, sis, put your egos aside, put your beefs aside, and let's come together and organize. If we do that,
seems to be a hard task.
That's a whole nother show in itself around organizing community organizers. A good friend of mine that I mentioned to you, Calvin Feliciano, is he's bringing community organizers together so we can start talking to one another and building relationships, because when we come together, City Hall, State House,
you can't touch them.
You can't touch citizens. You know what I'm saying? So what I see is citizens being empowered as individuals. I know that I can pick up my phone and call my city councilor. I can call my state rep. I can use the 311 app around basic city services. 2 days pass by and they don't do what they need to do on my street, then I hit 5 of my neighbors. Hey, can you do me a favor? I need you to call at 12 o'clock with me. And then if the street doesn't get it to get done, then you get the whole block to participate. And then you demand your city council to come out. You know what I mean? And why isn't this addressed? So I see the city evolving into a city that is championed by regular, everyday citizens that are demanding that their children get a proper education, whether it's Boston Public Schools, whether it's a parochial, or whether it's a charter school. I see the city being one. We are already at a point where no longer a minority people of color city. Boston is 53% people of color. So stop using the word minority and say people of color, because we're a majority now. So that's what I see in this city. I see, there's the mayoral race that's coming up. There's Tito and there's Marty.
Tito's running against Marty.
Tito's running against Marty. There's we don't know who else is going to get in the race. My thing is, and this is in support. I'm neutral. I'm neutral on both. I'm neutral. Mine's is citizens. Hold that one question though. My one warning to people of color, specifically Black people in Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan. I'm gonna look at whatever camera I need to look at. Do not
Yeah.
Which one? Do not allow that mayoral election to put a further divide between our community. Go with who you go with, and don't allow it to put a further divide between us. In 13, we had an opportunity to elect we had many qualified candidates of color. What's coming up this year, please do not allow our community to be separated even more. You was asking a
That
political
divide,
question.
because I was going to say, because every time an issue comes up, oh, that's a Republican problem. Oh, that's a Democrat problem. You know what I mean? And everybody's trying to, like you said about the divide. And I think it's all about the bipartisan. We should all work together. Even Donald Trump said that, but well, I didn't
That's a
wanna
whole
get-
nother-
That's a whole different.
I go with what James has been saying about
Oh, yeah,
the
definitely.
community waking up
Yes,
and
yes.
supporting their community, because
Yeah.
without that support from the community, we can't get anywhere.
No,
we
you're
put
right.
all them people
You're
up
right,
in
we can't.
office, and if they don't want to do their job, just try to get them out.
Right, right.
As simple as that.
And the other, Supreme Richardson
Yes,
he
yes.
taught me this concept, and he said, we elect and neglect. We get them in, we're excited, but then when they have a community meeting or they have a town hall, we don't go. We're excited
right,
Ayanna
that's
got
right.
elected, first black city council in the city of Boston, but when she calls for a hearing around trauma and women, where are they?
Comes.
Some people do,
Not,
but you
it
know what I
should be
mean?
More.
Yep.
City Hall always having meetings.
City Hall's always having meetings, and then also
and
we.
it's open to us.
But it's now here's where I have an issue. 1 o'clock in the afternoon, if I'm at MGH and I'm at work, I can't go to the hearing.
Okay, right,
So
right.
City Hall has to really start considering if they're going to start once a month doing hearings in the evening or on a Saturday. You're a city councilor, so you already know your job is not Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. You do not make 100 some. What did they get? 97 or 107,000? They got that big old raise. You are not making all that money to sit at a desk from 9 to 5. Do it on a Wednesday evening.
Right.
Do it on a Saturday morning or afternoon, so the community can come out and participate. Our voice is not heard. Sorry.
That's okay. Hey,
Our
you're
voice is
telling-
not
you're
heard
telling
as
right-
well
you're
as it's
right.
heard
You're
because
absolutely
it's
right.
not there are not environments that are
The soapbox
intentionally
ain't big enough.
set up for our voices.
Right.
There was this
Right,
whole
right,
trauma
right.
tour or trauma listening tour this summer around trauma services. I know the motive of the commission, but they needed to experience a town hall type model where community members could come and just go left. No, it was at a table, it was structured, there was post-it notes and markers and facilitators. You got some results, but we just need venues where our raw, informed voices can be heard and demand what it is we want in these hearings.
Do they advertise community meetings all the time?
Now here's another thing. On the electeds and the community leaders end, ensuring proper, ample enough proactive pre-planning time is given, and then be flexible about time and also location. Everybody can't come to City Hall. Everybody can't make it to, wherever.
Right,
Be
right,
flexible.
right.
But the balance is, when they are flexible and they get it out, we got to show up. You know what I mean? So it's like the what is it, cart before the horse or whatever? You know what I mean?
Right, right.
So yeah.
So what do we have to look up to know when there's a meeting?
You go to the City of Boston, City Council.
Yeah,
You go to cityofboston.gov and the City Council webpage, and they have upcoming hearings posted.
Oh, so that's the only way people will know, by punching the city.gov.
No, the counselors that file for the hearing and the committee leads that are going to lead the hearing, I would think, if I was either one, I would send out an email to all my constituents.
Right, right.
Andrea Campbell does that. I believe Ayanna does that. This hearing that's coming up on violence in Boston on April, I want to say 4th. I want to make sure I have the right date, so I won't say anything. But Andrea Campbell put an email out and said this is coming. Her office did. Tito probably will in his district as well. But really, they should be proactively getting that information out rather than us going to have to hunt and look for it.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
These elected officials should have mailing lists.
Yes, definitely.
Their Twitter account, their Facebook account. They have young people in their offices and whatnot. Utilize them.
Yeah, definitely. You're watching Community Update. For those of you who are just tuning in, if you have any questions or concerns, log on to our website at thebeantv.com. That's thebeantv.com. You're here, for those of you, again, who are just tuning in, you're listening to Mr. James Hills and Mr. Robert Badgett, and we're discussing the rules and regulation procedures around police brutality.
amongst other things that's going on in our community. But yeah, that's very interesting. But the thing is, they got all these events coming up, and it seems like what I see is like people take advantage of all these events, but they're always like parties and clowns, carnivals. But when it comes down to community issues, like when it comes to jobs, veterans, or mental health, everybody just sits back and they, nobody says nothing. Nobody takes any, like you said about being proactive. It's like people only care about the good times. And that's what I see in Boston, not just Boston, Cambridge, Brookline, everywhere. And everybody just wants to party, have a good time. No one cares about, what's going on in the community with jobs and how's it our homeless people out there, and if the numbers are growing. They're cutting, there's a lot of fundings that getting cut from different organizations. The MAP program, Impact was a organization that helped people actually find jobs. They prepared you, they donated like shirt and ties for people to prepare for interviews. They cut the funding on that because there wasn't enough money in the budget to keep it running. Come to find out, somebody in the organization was spending money and doing other things. But that's what I'm talking about. I mean, it's all about budgeting, and we can't have any type of organization to provide a adequate service for people in the community if you're always getting cut. So we got to figure out another thing, a fundraiser. We got to figure out a way to have a budget so these people don't have any excuses. So we can't do that for you because we don't have the money in the budget, because that's the first thing everybody says. You owe me $5, man. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't have. You know what I mean? That's what I'm getting. That's what I see. So I think it's a money problem, because in order to get things done, it takes capital. But the question is, like you said, how the community can get involved. But at some point, we're going to be asked to figure out a way to raise money for this. I mean, who's going to pay for these services?
So here's my issue. I got beat up a couple of times because I didn't call out names, but I called out offices.
Okay.
When it comes to youth violence prevention in Boston, the mayor, Dan Conley, Andrea Campbell, the city council for public safety, the two leaders of the mayor's office of public safety, BCYF, the Boston Public Health Commission, the police department, I may have missed a couple, the mayor. They are the entities
Right.
that are paid by our tax dollars to
Yes.
perform a service. So, not that I want a handout or not that I want a savior, but you're paid to do this.
Right, right.
The balance of that is we have to step up as the community, but they have to be held accountable to do their jobs as city appointed officials, municipal officials, as state officials. So, lollygagging and collecting a check for 40 hours worth of work, and you're not real. If you're in a position, you're a political appointee, a cabinet head, or anything that has to do that touches the life or the quality of life of a resident, and you're just there for a check, I got an issue with you. You know what I mean? You have to be invested in the community. My observation is that leadership around a wise leader may not know everything, but one thing that will display his or her wisdom is to get the people around them that do. And if you're not getting wise counsel by your inner circle, then you need to either change your inner circle or you need to find another way of getting wise counsel. And our city entities are charged to perform these services and duties. And if they're not, they need to be held accountable. And if it's a department thing, that's one thing. But if there are directors or whatever that are the helms of these areas and they're not doing their job, guarantee, if Marty Walsh wins a second term, watch the shakeup that happens at City Hall. Either way, there's going to be a shakeup.
Right.
He, first term mayor, Marty is very loyal. You know what I mean? And in his heart of hearts, I believe he wants to see our community do better. Very real, politics and whatnot play a role, in that. Next steps, next moves, is it politically advantageous? And that's not just him, that's any elected, candidate or whatever. But either if Marty goes in, he's gonna shake up City Hall like crazy, or if Tito wins and he goes in, there's going to be a huge shakeup, because it's a new administration.
Right.
You know what I mean? So so the balance is, no, we don't want a handout. No, we don't want city and government entities to come and just give. But if you got a budget and you wrote a line item to give out toothpaste and toothbrushes to the kids, give them out and not stock them at home and peeling off for your family and whatnot.
Right.
So, yeah.
How come we don't see many city council people come out into the communities unless it's time for them to get a vote?
Yeah, that's a
They should be,
That's a
you know,
very
coming
interesting
out there and
observation.
interacting
Only
with
when
the
you want it, when
communities.
come time to vote,
They
you know,
don't
they
come out
pop
to-
up all of a sudden, and all of a sudden, after they get elected, they disappear.
In all fairness, 9 of the city councilors really only have the responsibility of showing up in their district. Really, honestly.
Right,
Okay.
4 of them have to have their happy tails all across the city. Michelle Wu, the president of the city council, Michael Flaherty,
Yeah.
Ayanna Presley,
Yeah.
and is it Anissa? Who was the other 4th one that got that? I think it's Anissa George.
Anissa,
I don't think she's a district. So the major, the major 3 are Wu, Presley, and Flaherty, and I think it's Anissa Asabi George or something like that. I think she's the other at large. You need to have your tail all over the city, from South E
Yes.
to South End to West E to Mattapan to East Boston. You know what I
right,
mean?
yeah.
But you're right.
But when they come out, they're just coming out to give a speech. But you know, the regular city councilmen, you don't see them out here.
You don't see them out as much. There's a few, and I won't get into naming names
Right.
and not naming
Right.
names, but there's a few around violence issues.
Okay.
There's one that I know that shows up when there were 3 or 4 people at a memorial and she showed up. Well, obviously I said she, so we know who that is. But, you know, it like I said, every 2 or 4, 6 years, the electeds know that model wins. They show up to get the vote. So what we want citizens to do to show up to get results.
Right.
Sorry.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. And what is your observation?
You just said it.
I like to see them come out more and get to know the people in the community.
Right.
And what needs to be done in that community.
Right.
Then you don't have to come out just to get elected because people know that you're
Right.
doing your job.
They know
Do
you're
your
working,
job.
right.
Yes, exactly. Do your job.
And it's hard to get a meeting with them. You got to go through all these channels.
Yeah.
And then sometimes your meeting be so short, you know. Hey, it's tough. I've dealt with City Hall.
Yeah.
You know.
It's
we all
yeah.
have in our
It's very.
different
It's not the
parts of our
work
lives, but
that's frustrating. It's all the BS. You know, dealing with traumas and homicide
It's
may
the
sound
politics.
morbid, but
people seem to just worry
that
about
didn't get me as
politics of
much.
things.
It's the politics.
know?
Cindy Diggs said, "There's too much yellow tape for all this damn red tape." You know what I mean? And we entangle ourselves, I think, as community leaders and organizers in red tape. We do it to ourselves,
Yes.
to some extent, and then there's the systemic stuff that, you know, where if we could combat the systemic stuff, we could, but we won't get ourselves internally to a point to combat the systemic external stuff. We doing too much infighting.
So what's the best way for us to really hit the communities to get them to come out to meetings?
Getting on their doors. Actually getting together on a Saturday,
Take
for
advantage of the
example,
system set in
we meet at
place.
12 Baptist at 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
We have donuts and orange juice, and at 9, from 9:15 to 9:30, somebody gets up and does a quick training. This is what you do at the door. If they say no, nod your head and leave. Don't try to persist. You know, women, maybe take off your jewelry. Always have a couple of females and a male to go with them. Safety things. You go through the process of orienting them to door knocking. You give them a map of a street, you give them names and addresses, who to ask for, and you knock on the door and say, "Hi, I would like to let you know that on Tuesday night at 7 o'clock, we're having a community meeting about basic city services. Provide childcare and some sort of incentive. You know, you'll receive a raffle ticket and we're giving away a flat screen TV that night."
That get them out. That
Have something to offer them, just like entertainment, just like the entertainment.
Something.
for coming.
Yeah,
You
you're
know,
right. You're absolutely right.
In the most
Yes.
ideal situation,
T-shirts.
improvement on your quality of life should be the motive. It really should.
Yes, yes.
But if it's not, listen. The truth of the matter is, some people are working 2 jobs. Life for some people has just beat them down that they don't have the wherewithal. For some.
Right.
But if we can get incentives, if we could, just give me about 3 to 6 months, and we'll be all set. Well, not all set, but we'll start a
be a lot
movement of
further
where,
ahead.
where I can hit up somebody and say, "Listen, I need a TV," and then we have a community meeting, and we give out, you know, first 500 people are eligible for the TV.
I'm on that team with you.
Bruh,
I like it. I
Because
like that idea.
it's time, like you said, for people to step up.
to step up.
You know, and
yeah.
I've been screaming that forever.
Yes, sir.
you know. I used to come down to try to meet the mayor.
Yeah.
And he said, go see him, and James.
Really?
Yes.
James is the man.
Sitting in the back. Oh my God! I got a couple of phone calls. There's somebody out here that the mayor wants you to talk to, and I would go out. Sometimes it would go well, and then sometimes it wouldn't go so well. But
One time when Mayor Menino was out in office, I bought a flyer to his office and had the lady give me a receipt.
Okay.
Stating that she got
Give
my
it to him.
flyer.
Oh, right.
But when you saw him one-on-one, what was it? All love, huh? Or he'll fuss a little bit.
I really didn't get that one-on-one.
Out in the community, you never saw him?
I seen him a couple times in the community.
And then he
They
fussed.
gave him a flyer, whatever. I don't know whatever happened to it.
It's one thing I will say is that
But he was a good mayor, you know.
there's various opinions. There's comparison and contrasting between our former mayor and our current mayor. You know, at the end of the day, it would be a horrible human being that really does not care for other human beings. And I know some don't. You know, we just, whether Walsh or Menino or Evans or Hills or Badgett, if residents and citizens are in place, I don't care if they are a Hitler type, they ain't gonna be in there long. We'll get them out. And even if they stay, there'll be a figurehead because citizens will demand what it is that they want provided in this city.
That's what they're supposed to
Right.
do. But everybody want to keep their mouth shut.
We got to get ready to
Like
start
this.
opening them
You
out.
can't do that, but you
Scared.
can't because a
What-
closed
what-
mouth don't get fed.
what is-
So you have
what
to
are they-
step
what
up,
is
but
the
you have to
people
voice your
scared
opinion.
of?
You have,
People, and I say this sincerely, people are ignorant to the fact of the process. So they see the news. You know, there are language issues, there are education issues. You know, how far people matriculated through the educational process. So, in all fairness, there is a population that really has legitimate, valid reasons why they don't participate. But then there's a larger population that just it's not their priority. They rather hit the club and party. They rather, 420 all day, or for the brothers get what they can get, or the sisters, they now going after the brothers. Our priorities are not straight.
It's a sad situation.
It is.
For real.
And there's a lot of contributing factors. It's not an excuse, but there's large contributing factors around systemic things that get people to the point where they're like that, and they get comfortable in it because it becomes a familiar way of life. I get up, I go to work, I come home, I smoke, I chill with the kids, and then it's repeat.
To me, if people don't start stepping up in the communities, our little children is going to be right behind them little teenagers doing all wrong, and then the police going to end up raising them.
Yep, the police
Yeah.
and the system
See,
and
that's
and
right.
DYS.
The
and
system, that's
DCF.
what I'm saying. The system
Yep.
going to
Yeah.
raise these
And
little
guess what?
ones.
If we don't organize, it won't happen in Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan. We'll be in Salem and Randolph and
Right,
Stoughton.
go everywhere.
Gentrification.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's
Property
a whole
value
nother,
goes down,
topic. This mayoral election and what happens with those parcels, and also the race in D7. Whoever becomes the new city council of D7, basically that new parcel of land over there falls under their reign. You know what I mean? Not under their reign, but they become an advocate. They either become a wheeler and dealer with developers,
Right.
or they become a true advocate for the community. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
yeah, because they're trying to change Dudley. They're trying to change it.
Dudley's
How they-
already changed.
Dudley
No,
Dudley
Dudley
looks like
taking away
Brooklyn.
the name
Right.
Dudley.
Oh, yeah,
Call
yeah.
Roxbury
That- yeah.
Gardens, like they did with
That's-
Orchard
That's
Park.
yeah.
what they call Dudley?
Yeah,
There-
they're trying to get
there's a
rid of it. I
movement
say
now
by
to
the year
try to,
2018, they're thinking about having
They're trying to change the name.
eliminate.
Now, let's keep it real. I don't really have a beef with Dudley's name being changed because if you look at the Dudleys and the slaves and
That's slave
so
master.
yeah, so Dudley, Yawkey, Warren, all of them.
Right,
If we're going, you almost made me cuss. If we're going to change names,
Yeah.
let's put some Johnsons and some Smiths and some what was Carlos's father's name? Some Enriquez's.
Yeah.
On people Brooks. Wasn't
in
there a
other words,
Senator
more
Brooks from
grassroots.
years
Yeah, there
ago?
was,
Yeah.
there
You know
was.
what I mean? Let's
Right,
start
right, right.
changing and having schools name. At some point they're going to do a Menino School, Menino Street. Well, let's talk about, we have Jeep Jones Park, but let's talk about, you know what I mean, allowing Dudley to be maybe named after someone from Boston that's made great strides most recently of color. You
Yes.
know what I mean? But to your point about,
I mean, they named
if
the
we
park
don't,
after Michael Bivins. Ramsey Park is Michael Bivins Park.
But
From-
what does Michael do?
He's a producer, but I'm just saying, if they can-
Listen. All he does is come and have a basketball tournament. Come on now, a basketball
Yeah,
tournament?
yeah,
Put a
but-
building up or something.
Yeah.
I will give this to Mike. At least he does come back. And the truth of the matter is,
Right,
new
he's-
additions incoming. I mean, they're getting it now, but
Yeah,
Mike ain't
of
had all
course,
the
yeah.
millions he had before.
They just living up to keep up with the Jones, to me.
He came back and gave some money to that park. They do the basketball thing, but he's one of the few that have
few.
left Boston.
Right.
That at least does still come back once a year or a basketball game, but at least he does. There's some folks up out of Boston that won't even own that they're from Boston and doing quite well,
That's right.
but and forget from whence they came.
Yeah.
My cousin-
like Guru, for example.
my
he's
cousin
no longer with
Margot
us.
Thunder,
He left
right?
Boston, went to New York.
Margot Thunder,
Yep.
she came here and did a show and just took right off.
Yeah.
From
Margot Thunder.
but what was the group? 9.9.
9.9,
right.
yeah.
And Ronnie.
With Leslie and,
Ronnie's my
Wanda.
cousin also, but he
Right.
don't come here.
Yeah,
You know,
Maurice
but-
Stars back and forth. He comes every
Yeah,
now
but-
and again, but
What are they trying to put up for the youth?
The other piece is
well,
to
I'll say one thing. It's a good thing because it's entertainment to get them off the streets. You know, they're doing something positive in a way. Entertainment is not bad, but it's just, I think you should have more options. Everybody
Right,
can't sing,
that's
everybody
right,
can't dance or
right.
rap. You know, that we should have more black kids going to become like Hispanic and all different, you know, ethnicities, for lack of a better word.
there are
To become
disciplines.
doctors, lawyers, judges, and so on.
boom operators, production assistants.
Yeah, there you go.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? There are all type of discipline. There are all type of disciplines we can get the young people in, but we just have to get people that are going to be willing to mentor them and take them under their shoulder. Some of these celebrities from the Patriots, the ones that are from here, people that are from out of town that just come play for the team, I don't expect anything from them.
Right,
They ain't
right,
from here.
right, right.
You know what I mean? But born bred, Sox, Celts, Pats, Revolution, Bruins. I don't know what the percentage is, but it's as simple as community residents organizing and sending a letter to their foundations and saying, we want to do this cookout for 50 young men
And they're-
that did not shoot a gun for 6 months. We need, $6,000.
Their foundations have money too.
It's just about us getting together and organizing and doing it, but
Right.
everybody, and the funny thing is a lot of the organizers are part-time. What I mean by that is most of the people that I know that are doing organizing, they work full-time jobs.
Right,
So they
right.
squeeze in the organizing between I say this often, my job is 4:30 to 9:30 Monday through Friday. My check is 8 to 4:30 Monday through Friday. That's the check producer. But my job in the work is the 4:30 to 9:30. But we have to figure out ways to get people in positions and strategically placed, those that really care and will be committed to the work. Most of it, we don't get paid for the stuff that we do.
Right.
So if we got a position that we did get paid, we're going to be so committed to it because, it's wonderful. I'm getting paid nice money at what I do, but we're there 7 to 7. It's not a 9 to 5. You know what I mean? You have to get people that are committed and really dedicated to the residents, in the city of Boston. It's just collecting a check in different municipal positions.
Right.
It shows.
It does. It definitely does show. It definitely does. But yeah, well, we do have a lot of people that come from Boston that have done great things, and some of them have stayed, some of them left. What do you say to people like that? But then again, it leaves an empty taste in the community's mouth because you constantly hear it. Oh, they don't do nothing for the community. They up and leave. Everybody just leave, takes what they call it, take the money and run. Everybody thought new addition to that. Look at Antonio Salde.
He's still here.
He's still here.
He's still here doing it.
He had his
That's
shop
Big
over in
Brother,
Codman Square.
Yeah,
Antonio
he's
Salde.
And listen, he did the 4-piece thing.
Yep, that's right.
He's in the
T-Quest
process
and
now.
Wyatt Jackson.
Yep, of getting the website back up as far as his clothes
Yep.
and whatnot. But let me tell you something about. I call him E.
Right, yeah.
He works at City Life. Mm-hmm. If you all know anything about City Life, he used to fuss, and if you know him, he can fuss quite well.
Yes,
He used to say, y'all talking about just
Critical breakdown.
this local stuff, but this dude is organizing
Yeah.
rallies around, the mortgage issue and whatnot in D.C. at the Capitol. You know what I mean? So he still does his spitting and his clothing line and whatnot, but this dude, he really is like a
He's one of
strong
the people that
community
is giving
activist. Yeah, I would have him on and talk. But when we talked about the
Yes.
housing and whatnot,
yeah.
yo, I'm sorry, he gets it.
That's good.
Yeah. Good brother. Good
Yep.
brother.
I can send you his info.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, there's so much going on in Boston. It really is, and people really need to take advantage. You need to step up, like you said. Both of you were saying, we need to step up. A closed mouth don't get fed. You can't just go walk through the streets. Oh, this happened. You turn the other way, and you just don't. You know what I mean? That's got to stop.
The question is, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
You see it, like, what are you just going to point? You know, I've even got to the point now when I have little pieces of gum and paper and whatnot, I'm not comfortable just, I like put it in my pocket or I find it in the trash can. Then when I get home and I got a whole bunch of stuff.
Like
But I'll say this and I'll shut up. What we're dealing with now, and you all know because you're a little bit older, but these are the great, and I would even say great. What we're dealing with now are the grand and great-grandkids of the crack epidemic.
There you go.
Right.
That's right.
My mom was first generation impacted, so I would be second generation. I'm 45. My child would be the grandchild of the crack epidemic.
Right.
So my mother raised, for example, dealt with her issues. I got 80% of her values and morals. So I'm starting off at a deficit. My grandmother stepped in and she made up. But if I'm starting at 80% of her morals and values, like the regard for life, and then my child only gets 60% because I'm dealing with my own issues, they're automatically at a double deficit because they're getting 60% of 80%. So they're already at a 20% deficit plus 40. This is why young people can go out and shoot somebody because they don't understand or have a regard for something as simple as LIFE. I killed a cat one day driving. Went into work and left half shift. I killed a cat. How can these kids walk around and take a life and go home? Now we know that they're self-medicating, they're smoking loud, they're drinking, they're Ritalin, and they're taking the prescription drugs or whatever. But what we're dealing with now, I venture to say, is a result of the crack epidemic and everything that trickled down since, and the generational impact since then. Behavioral health issues. Crack babies, and then I hate the word, children that were born to parents that were dealing with issues of crack. The psychological issues, and so they're starting off, and then they're passing on, and and people are walking around with behavioral health and mental health issues undiagnosed and don't know. And for us, I say all the time, it'll do you some good to go lay on somebody's black couch. They're paid to listen.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the truth.
Shut up.
We're almost out of time. Where does the time go, right? But just to wrap up, for those of you, again, who's tuning in, you're watching Community Update. We'll talk about the rules and regulations and procedures of police brutality, amongst other things, and community development. And we're here with James Hills and Mr. Robert Badgett. And, of course, I'm Andre Evans, your host. And I also just want to wrap up. So, in general, this is what we see, this is what we have to do. But the time is now, because I hate to say this, but this year is almost over. I don't know.
Basically, it's
April,
April, and
it's
April, summer, and then
summer
September,
comes
and then the
goes.
holidays.
That's right.
And the closing, so we have to really, time is now to step up. And my suggestion for those of you who are watching out there, probably trying to figure out, damn, what are they talking about? What are we going to do? How are we going to resolve this issue? It's like what James was saying and what Robert was saying. And as a people, we need to step up. We need to attend more meetings. And we need to start writing more letters, pushing the envelope, and start getting more. It's about getting involved. You remember the old, Lean On Me, where Morgan Freeman stood up and said, it's time to get involved.
Yeah, that's
and that's
right.
a strong message.
That's right.
And I think there's the time we have to get involved. And us as a people, myself too, because I have a platform. And I'm using this platform to voice my opinions and bring people on that can help put this forum together and help resolve some of these issues. I mean, it's not going to happen overnight.
I'm with James all the way because I've been looking to partner up with people like himself.
Right.
Because I did a lot of flyers.
Yes.
Over thousands.
You can come teach a outreach workshop.
There you go. Don't get him started now.
I don't have no problem with volunteering this,
Yes,
that, and
sir.
the other for something positive.
Absolutely.
Because I can't
Yes.
deal with the negative.
Nope.
No,
Because
yes.
I'm not trying to lead no one astray.
Nope.
Right.
Whatever I know, I don't mind sharing.
Absolutely. And we need that because there's some brothers out there. There's something I can learn from you. There's something some other brothers
all
can learn.
can learn
We
from
need
each
that.
other.
That's
but
right.
we need
That's true.
with all due, we need the elders I think that's a lot what's missed too.
Well,
We've
you got
lost the
me,
regard.
Yeah.
We've lost the regard for that. The passing on of information, the
Yeah.
passing on of how to do it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Reason why I feel the way I feel, because my parents and grandparents paved the way for me to be here.
Yep.
Who's paving it for these little ones? Because of that lost generation.
Yeah.
Where
The little
everybody's
ones.
worried
Kids
about paving
kids
their
are parents
own.
now. Kids are becoming parents.
But they
That's part of the problem.
a lot of them are neglected too much
Yeah.
by their own
Yeah,
parents.
broken homes.
So
and-
they go look for love outside.
Yeah.
And then that drug dealer or whoever
Or the
give
pimp.
them that love.
Or the pimp.
Or the pimp. They give them that love that they're searching for.
Or they become police.
and
Some
nine
of them
times
actually
out
go,
of
I'm
10,
gonna be
they
a police
end up-
officer. Oh, you know.
they could end up being
way off
strung
the
out at a young age
Yeah.
themselves.
I mean, it's happening now.
Yeah, it is.
It's happening now. You know what I mean? And that's
It
a
is.
whole nother, show in itself. It just comes down to the fact of getting back to the things of family. And I'll venture to say this, however you interpret or worship him or her, if you do that. God, family, community. God, family, community.
Right.
Step, repeat. God, family, community. We'll be all right.
That's right.
That's right.
And I always say what you just said. Put God first. I used to tell those young people, make your parents proud of you. Then I caught myself, hey, you make God proud of you, be the best you can be.
God,
And then
family,
you end up
parents.
Right. No, the parents going to automatically be proud.
Yeah.
Because you're doing well.
Right, right.
You know, and you keep God up there first. Yeah, they end up having people work for them when
Yep.
they get older.
Yep.
And that's a true fact.
That's what we need.
We have to have God. My youngest son that makes these shirts, right? He told me years ago, oh, Dad, when he got grown, Dad, thank you for introducing me to God because I raised him.
Yep.
And he gave me a run for my money, but, he's doing great.
They all do.
He's doing great things,
Well, unfortunately, our time has come to an end. And again, I want to thank you for tuning in. And thanks, Mr. James Hills.
My
and
pleasure,
Mr. Robert
sir.
Badgett, for taking time out of their busy schedule to be on the show. Stay tuned for more community update next week. Keep it, tuned in. Community update. I'm Andre Evans. And thank you again. God bless. And we'll see you again soon.